Let's hop across the desk now where Florence Villemino is ready to talk us through the international front pages and, of course, the Panama Papers dominating much of the coverage this morning. Let's start us off with the Wall Street Journal. They're focusing on the efforts to crack down on tax evasion and money laundering.
That's right, and they actually liken it to that very popular arcade game Whack-A-Mole. You know, where you have a mallet and these moles, these plastic moles pop out of random holes and you have to whack them. Well, when you whack one, another one pops up somewhere else, and that's exactly what it's like when you're trying to crack down on tax evasion, according to the Wall Street Journal. Essentially, when you start cracking down on more traditional locations, people turn elsewhere, and so they pop up elsewhere. And in recent years, we've seen, for instance, in Europe, that EU authorities have really been cracking down on traditional tax havens like Switzerland or Luxembourg. And so the Wall Street Journal says it's not really surprising that you have these other tax havens popping up in more exotic locations like Panama.
Well, the scandal's continuing to send shockwaves around the world. And in Iceland, the fallout's been rather significant, hasn't it, with the Prime Minister resigning after his name was linked to this.
That's right. And when the Panama Papers first came out, bets were on as to who was going to be the first casualty. Well, it appears to be the Prime Minister of Iceland. You can see him here on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Also, of course, in the papers in Iceland. I pulled out the front page of Fréttablaðið, where you can see him once again facing a horde of reporters here. There was some confusion yesterday, though, because initially at the beginning of the day, the Prime Minister said that he was going to hold on. Then he asked the President to dissolve Parliament and hold an early election. And then he said he was stepping down. But then he actually issued a press statement in English where he said, no, actually, he wasn't resigning. And you can read more about that story in here in the Iceland Monitor. He said he was only stepping aside for an unspecific amount of time. But then it turned out that he actually was resigning. Lots of confusion. But what's interesting is opposition parties say that his resignation is not enough, and you can read more about it in the Iceland Monitor. Yesterday, a motion of no confidence was put on the table, and the opposition parties say that this vote of no confidence is still very much alive.
Well, the papers are combing through the names in the data leak. They're also focusing on those names absent from the papers.
That's right. There's a suspicious lack of Americans in the Panama Papers, about 200 actually. And so Slate, the French version, wonders, are rich Americans more honest than other rich people? Well, no, probably not, according to Slate. The thing is, rich Americans don't need Mossack Fonseca to hide their fortune. In fact, they don't even need to go to Panama to launder their money. They can do it quite easily in the United States. There's certain states in the United States where it's very easy to set up shell companies. For instance, the states of Wyoming, Delaware, and Nevada. So that's one reason. Another reason why perhaps there are fewer Americans in the Panama Papers than you might have expected is because it's actually gotten really hard to hide your money abroad if you're a U.S. citizen. There's the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which was passed in 2010 and actually allows U.S. authorities to make other countries send them bank information on U.S. citizens. And so perhaps that left U.S. citizens plenty of time to get out of Panama before the Panama paper leak.
Well, this American absence is actually going beyond these names in the leak, isn't it? Even the media coverage and public reaction has been sort of out of kilter with the rest of the world.
That's right. It's been very interesting trying to find articles in the U.S. media on the Panama Papers. I was quite surprised to see that the coverage was really behind on U.S. Or on European media, rather, and because it's really the leading story around the world. And L'Obs, the French newspaper, takes a closer look at what's going on here and says it's pretty surreal. I mean, you have papers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, also the major media network Bloomberg. They weren't actually involved in combing through the documents. They weren't part of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists that combed through these documents for a year. Now, why is that? Well, L'Obs says that actually the consortium didn't want these major publications to be on board because they were afraid that they would actually steal the limelight and kind of keep the scoop for themselves. So the U.S. papers that are involved in leaking the Panama Papers are relatively unknown papers abroad, like the Charlotte Observer, the Miami Herald. You've also got the major Latino network, Univision. But it's quite surprising to see how it's playing out in the U.S. media. Now, why is this? Could it be because there are so few Americans involved, or is it because the consortium was afraid that they would steal the scoop?
Well, there's just quickly scandal, Panama Papers scandal, gift that keeps on giving, and the scandal of the day is FIFA once more.
That's right. Just one last newspaper. Let's take a look at The Guardian, which is covering this story. This is Gianni Infantino. He's been caught up with the scandal. You can see here, FIFA chief that was actually elected to clean up the game. Well, he's been dragged into this corruption scandal.
Okay, thanks for that, Florence. That's all we've got time for. Florence Filmino with the press, Stephen Carroll with the business. Do stay with us. We're back in just a few moments' time with more of the latest headlines.